Guys, we're live. It's happening. This is real. Everything you do and say is now cemented in history forever. So no pressure. Also, if I sound muffled and you're not watching the video, I'm wearing a mask. I'm having some work done on my home. And I don't want you all to yell at me if I don't wear a mask, even though I'm unionized. So this is for all you haters out there. What an intro to a podcast. All right, so I'm Justin Giddings. I'm here with John Fitzgerald and Paul June, and this is Film Festival Mastery, presented by Filmocracy.
Hey, Paul, tell us where we are with this floor plan here.
This is our competitive stadium floor plan, so you can have people sitting in different sections and watching the show, whatever that show happens to be, streaming on YouTube Live or Twitch.
There we go. Yeah, okay, cool. So you can like sit around and see us talking. That's interesting. That's a really cool way to do online screenings, right? Which is new.
I'm gonna go make that discount code right now.
You should go.
We are close to launching the Filmocracy Film Club, which I think is going to be fun.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Well, it's like, think of a book club but for movies, where Filmocracy members can come and join us for a monthly screening where we'll have happy hours and show the movie and have a Q&A.
Cool.
So it's just like a movie club.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Well, guys, do you want to officially get this podcast started, I guess? Can discuss amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. I've been thinking about this idea of how COVID has affected not just festivals but markets. And as most of us recall, Cannes last year essentially did the online marche, and there were a couple of competing factions trying to create opportunities for buyers and sellers to kind of do their thing without being able to meet on the Croisette and at the Carlton and have their beers and drink all the drinks that they consume during that festival. It's kind of a crazy party, but obviously people miss the live interaction. But it has been interesting kind of tracking what's happening, because usually Cannes is in May, and this year it's in July 6th or the 17th. And today the kind of the crux of the article was that they've now officially announced their opening night movie. They're officially coming back. Movie theaters in France are going to reopen May 18th. So they're on. It's going to open with Adam Driver in this musical called Annette, and I think Wes Anderson's movie that was kind of put on hold.
Yeah, the French something.
Yeah, the French Dispatch. So it's on, and I think one of the interesting elements here is how the festival and the marché coexist, because earlier in the year, the marché, Jerome announced that they were going to essentially have a pre-screening thing happening in June 21st to the 25th. So what does that mean?
Right.
And it's kind of an online thing. And I thought it was interesting in this article that Richard Lorber from Kino Lorber, has been dealing with this shift, right? And he's adapted to the virtual markets and the online festivals. And he says, until there's some recalibration of costs and opportunity on the acquisition and theatrical releasing fronts, we'll take our time easing back into international festival participation. So I thought that was interesting, right? Yeah. Because a lot of movies are bought and sold at these markets, but what we saw, even with Sundance this year that was mostly virtual, a lot of movies are bought and sold. And maybe that's not a market like, the Berlinale or AFM or the Marché in Cannes. I think of a market as a festival market as an opportunity for movies to be bought and sold. And Toronto doesn't have a market, but they kind of are one, right? So I just thought it was an interesting departure for a conversation today, because filmmakers are planning their festival circuit. A lot of them attend these markets and purchase market screenings or go in under the umbrella of a sales agency. So I just thought I'd bring it up for conversation. So I don't know,
Yeah.
Paul, you have any thoughts?
So this is my background, and I worked in independent film sales for a long time and went to all these markets and spent a lot of money on behalf of my company. And
Ooh,
just
can
for
I
a frame
tell?
of reference, like it's absurd how much it costs to be there. Like we
Yeah,
would
it'd be
rent
like
an
over
office.
10 grand a person.
Yeah, like we would rent an office that was 40,000 euros for the week, for like 10 days. It was a very nice office, to be fair. Um,
I
and
Oh,
then
did you have an ocean view?
yes, we were right on the set, actually. We could
Love
see
that.
the red carpet from our office.
Nice.
that feels
And
like that
then,
premium real estate.
yeah, I mean, people would like come up to our office to watch the red
Yeah.
carpet stuff, and we
Wow.
would like have rosé, of course, from up there. And like Airbnbs would be like 5,000 euros for that same amount of time. So, it's not a cheap place to be, and especially like even like, beer is 20 euros at the bar, and going to a restaurant, they like triple their prices because they can. But all that to say that the market industry has been kind of like overblown for a long time, like in excess, and has not contracted to the point where it makes financial sense, but people were just going with it because it's Cannes and became this kind of like cultural zeitgeisty thing that you do as
Yeah,
a film lover.
you have to be there, right? If you're
Right.
anybody.
But most of the time, for most people, the cost does not justify you going there. And as these distributors and sales agents button up their expenses and their income statements, they are not going to those events as much, or not sending as big teams as they used to,
Mm,
because the sales agents have learned, like, hey, this is a relationship based business. I already know all of the buyers. I know which buyers will buy from me because they are my friends, and I don't need to go.
right.
I don't need to spend $7,000 on a business class ticket on Air France. I'm not saying that's anyone I know, but that is somebody who does that. So, you can make all these same sales over the phone. Totally doable. Send them a screener link. They'll watch it, let you know what they think. That's all it really takes. So, we're gonna see that this is gonna continue to contract, and I think Cannes is cognizant of that, and that's why they're taking it slow.
Is there a segment of filmmaker that benefits from a market? Like, okay, if you made like a 5 million-ish thingy here that has 1 star, but it's not, like, yeah, the question, is there any segment of filmmaker or film that
Well, I think what's really important is to distinguish the kind of the different variables that kind of define these markets, right? And what filmmakers are trying to achieve. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, on one of our courses, where we talked about the short film corner, right, in Cannes. So those filmmakers aren't necessarily bringing their movies into the Marche and paying for a screening because they think they're going to sell their movie. They're attending that event because they know they're going to be able to network. They're going to get to walk the floors and see who's buying the kinds of films they want to make. They're going to meet a lot of people, and hopefully they're going to be able to present their movies and be discovered by some way, shape, or form. And I think there's that piece of it, but the other piece is if you make genre films, for example, and there are certain buyers and sellers that kind of trade in that category, then you can track those people down at these markets. Now, if you don't have that film ready, or you got a script under your arm, they may not want to be dealing with you because they're buying and selling the projects that they've spent money to create materials for. But that doesn't mean you can't use it as an opportunity to say hello. And you meet people at parties, you meet people on the Quasette. I mean, I think it's an opportunity to network as much as it is to sell your movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your work should really be done before the market, not necessarily at the market. If you're just going to try to walk into somebody's booth or office and like have something happen, like everyone's busy. Like you're only there for 10 days. You're booked back-to-back meetings for the whole day, and then at night you got to go party and network that way too. So, taking care of a random dude who walks in and says, "I've got the most amazing movie in the world." I mean, this is happens all the time, but you can't do anything with it.
Yeah, and I remember I took my first film to the Berlin market, and I remember paying for a screening. I think I was under the IFP umbrella at the time. And obviously the American Pavilion provides a lot of these opportunities nowadays, but this is a long time ago. This predates Slam Dance. So it's 94 or 95. I think I went right after Slam Dance. But the point is I paid for the screening. That's right. There is some gray in my beard, but I did pay for the screening, and they do track everybody that comes. And you're, like Paul said, you're doing your homework before you go. So I knew who I wanted to get to that screening. I sent out a bunch of invitations, and I was able to see the list of people that came. And so for me, it was an opportunity to follow up with all these people. And ultimately, one of the sales agents ended up buying the movie. And I didn't make much money, but the point is I was able to meet a lot of people and learn how that whole process worked. And I think that's another thing that's really valuable for filmmakers, that even if your film doesn't get into Berlin or Cannes or Toronto or Sundance or any of these bigger festivals that have a market component, I still think there's huge value, if you can afford it, to going out there, on a mission, not just, to party and, see a few movies, literally make it a work trip, and you come back with tons of business cards, tons of relationships, and you know a lot more about the kinds of companies. And you can see, by the way, if you have a clue and any social skills, you can see who the crooks are. And there are a lot of them. And it's a lot easier to spot them in action playing used car salesman than it is just doing your research online.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's worth it to most people to do that, to fly over there, book your room, try to trudge through and make meetings with people who don't really want to see you. And it's possible, but with that amount of money, can you do something else? Can you just market your film or spend a little bit more on your film and make it a better film? I mean, that's ultimately what's going to make or break you.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I was going to say, or a different, I always come at this from the marketing standpoint. What is your goal, right? And what is that target market, and where do they exist? And so it might be worth it sometimes for some projects and some filmmakers to drop some major cash to go sit in the cafes of Cannes. But for others, it might be okay, we'll go to Toronto. I'm maybe 10 hours south, right? So I just drive right up, or head out to Sundance, other places where this is happening, or AFM, with Filmocracies in, partnership with them. I can engage with a lot of that without even having to show up. And it wouldn't cost me, $10,000 to make it happen. So I agree with you that there are times where being in that room, that glitzy, glamorous room, whatever that room is, but in Cannes, is really, really valuable. But this is kind of the crux of what we're talking about, which is everything's changed to the point now where that's no longer something you have to do. That's just one of your options. And we talk about a lot, John, there's so many streaming channels and so much content that you can really create direct line relationships that are lucrative and valuable to all parties involved without having to necessarily be in that room.
Well, that kind of triggers the next point, I think, really, which, and Paul can speak to this too, in terms of the virtual experience. But I think, what we saw with the success in the virtual market, right, with Cannes and even Berlin to some extent, the question is, maybe you don't want to spend the money because you don't need to be on the Quizette, or you'd rather put your money into, something else for your film. But what about the virtual experience? If you took that same package of goals that Justin was just talking about, and you were saying, okay, I want to meet people. So whether it's AFM or the pre-screening marché, Can you take advantage of the virtual experience, right? Can you still meet people, whether you screen your film or not? You can probably find a way to engage through a virtual experience and still get a lot out of that and save a ton of money.
Yeah, I think this is the main thing that's interesting now is the independent film industry is largely a very kind of old guard. People who have been doing it for a long time get in positions of power and they're very happy there, fat and happy, and happy to do things the old way that they used to, which is spending a lot of money, meeting with their friends at different markets, and basically enjoying the high life. And now, with COVID and more virtual markets coming into play, I don't think anybody has cracked the nut yet of making a successful, more effective virtual market. Because right now, all of my sales agent friends still say, yeah, it's kind of cool. Like Berlinale Online was kind of cool. But at the end of the day, I just set my own Zoom calls as I usually do. So if that is not helping you, then obviously Berlinale cannot charge a lot when they used to charge, thousands of dollars for passes and rooms and offices, and the whole, Berlin area would just spike in money being spent there. So I think we're going to see a rise of virtual markets from maybe people who used to be in the industry, but maybe were not so deep into it, but are seeing this from a new lens of like, how can you make deals and how can you even build a company and a market completely virtually and make it an effective thing? And there's a few organizations that I've spoken to that are kind of thinking this way too. Like, what if we only ever stay as a virtual market? What does that look like? And how do we get people to come? So a lot of interesting stuff I think is happening out there, but nobody has really figured it out yet.
Well, here's an interesting point because I hear an echo now.
Yeah, I just started hearing an echo.
That's weird. What I was going to say though was from a filmmaker standpoint, Justin, if you think about the idea of the big markets, at least two of them, being part of big festivals, and then you've got AFM, which is a market that's not really connected to a festival right now, and then you've got festivals like Toronto, and you've got other festivals that have never been called markets either, but there's buying and selling going on. Telluride, for example. And then what about smaller festivals that have great programmers that now, because of this virtual experience, I think that the kind of the jury's out. But I feel like if you've got over 2,500 streaming platforms all looking for content, a lot of those have to be paying more attention to festivals now, and they're just looking to fill pipelines. So they know they can't compete with, A24 and Neon and some of the bigger players at Sundance or Toronto, but they might be able to go into some of the tier 2 festivals that don't call themselves markets, but if films start becoming bought and sold at some of the lesser known festivals or even some of the top community festivals, is that a great market opportunity for a filmmaker, even a short filmmaker?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think the value of this sort of diversification, if you will, of opportunity and endpoints, is creates opportunity for filmmakers. And the sort of the tension I see is sort of the ability to, it's like there's a larger ocean to play in, but also now there's a larger ocean to play in. So it's kind of like, how do you find yourself in that space? So that's it's funny. I was on the phone the other day with somebody who was potentially going to do some crowdfunding, and the conversation kind of started with why, why the old, I'm this old school person. I like to do old school things, and I'm not really the whole like entrepreneur artist. I want to just be the artist. And it just feels like you can't do that anymore. You've got to it's gonna exactly right. There's gonna be a select few people who can get away with just, here's my art and now it lives. And before, when there were a couple of markets and they were the markets and that was how you bought and sold films, you could kind of get away with it because maybe the merits of the project could get it far enough. to get it into that market. And it's like, great, now this is the 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 curation of what's potentially out there. But now, like you were saying, like now festival directors are becoming the curators. You know, people with taste and bloggers and YouTubers. I mean, the people who hold the keys of curation is now diversifying to the point where filmmakers have to be able to develop those relationships with them and have to be able to market their own projects and create awareness around their own projects. Because there's not just like, okay, if I just get it to Cannes or get it into Sundance, that's my best opportunity. For many people, it's not the best opportunity anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that you didn't really say, but I think you were kind of implying, is that, you know, it is a big ocean now. And if you don't think about your platform and where you're going to land and how eyeballs are going to find you, then to some extent, it doesn't really help to sell your movie. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, the flip side to that coin is, yes, you might have hundreds of new buyers out there that didn't exist 10 years ago that are going to these, you know, second and third tier festivals looking to buy movies. Are they really buying the movies, or are they offering revenue shares for a platform that doesn't have a lot of eyeballs yet and that could influence another deal or become an obstacle for another deal for another territory? So I do think it kind of opens up a big can of worms, but we're all here supporting independent filmmakers. I mean, that's really what it's all about. So the question is, how do you kind of have checks and balances here to this evolving landscape?
I think also there should be some sort of symbiosis between film festival and distributor. If this is the end goal, if ultimately you want to have a festival to showcase independent filmmakers and help them get distribution, why are you not working with distributors directly?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, saying like, oh, we're going to have our own film market is a sexy thing to say, but when you execute it and only like one distributor shows up, like that's just a really bad look. So what can you do instead? Like, instead of saying I have a film market, why don't you just say like, we are working with X, Y, and Z distributors, and you know, you have like a direct path if you get into my festival. Like, I think people just need to think a little bit more outside the box and a little bit more realistic about what they can expect out of distributors, and how much commitment they can give to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like film festivals almost in a way need to start considering what the filmmakers' end goals could be.
Yeah.
Right. And then they need to decide where they land. Are they an audience festival? Are they a festival that highlights certain, you know, themes or whatever, or highlights whatever to a certain audience, you know, whether it's regional or something like that. I'm thinking of things like, you know, even Cleveland, Heartland, Deep in the Heart. Austin's kind of done that with the whole writers angle kind of thing. Yeah, I just, you know, or they need to start thinking themselves as curators, and they're developing the relationship with the distributors. You know, I run such and such festival, like genre or documentary, right? Start easy. But you know, I do such and such festival. I do Shriek Fest. I do Fantastic Fest. I do Film Quest. And then people start turning to you as the sort of ultimate arbiter of what's good in that niche or good in that genre. And then people start buying that way. But I feel like it's on the film festival. It's becoming more and more on the film festival to be a part of that process that connects the filmmaker to their ultimate goals. Otherwise, you're just a screening platform. And I don't think we need more of those. I think there's plenty of places to watch a film.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do think that you do have to understand that if you're a festival and you show 25 movies, the goals for all those 25 filmmakers aren't always the same. And so, you know, if you're going to be a certain festival and provide certain platforms for discovery, you kind of need to know if you're gonna really help that filmmaker. Is it about making relationships? Is it the networking? Is it attending these educational panels? Or is it, you know, making headway into some of the some of the sub distributors or even producers reps, who can take that movie and help you sell it, even if you're not in one of the top tier festivals.
Yeah. I almost think of like screenwriting contests. Maybe not the S tier and A tier, but even like the screen crafts and that kind of stuff. The goal of, or Austin will say, like the goal of quote winning that isn't just I won. It's also the idea that contest is going to now connect you to reps and managers and lit people and lawyers. And, after Slam Dance, it was like, okay, even winning is the short. It was like, okay, we're going to introduce you to these lawyers and we're going to introduce you to these people. And so it was like sort of a way to connect writers to the industry through this contest. And I kind of feel like that's an opportunity that film festivals are sort of missing, is a way to sort of market themselves, even frankly, as like, hey, if you get to us, if you got through all the steps of making the film and us screening the film, all that kind of stuff, once you're in this family, we're going to work hard to move your career forward in meaningful ways. We will email a list of people. This is the list of people and agents and reps. This is the list of producers. And then I think, we saw this with the blacklist, we saw this with the blood list. Like then these curated suggestions become entities in and of themselves that people can say, yeah, I was part of such and such thing, and that's a little resume point. I was on the blacklist, or some future festival gold list or something like that. It might even be something to think about with Film Festival Mastery at some point, is some sort of curated, like, based off of who we have relationships with, the films that are in our student base that we can help. We do that individually for each individual filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we did that with Filmocracy Fest too. I mean, Paul and I, we pulled together a list of all the, whatever it was, 60 ambassadors, and we sent out a PDF to all the filmmakers that came through our festival with contact info for all those players. And so whether they were looking to, bring their next script to this agent or manager or producer, or they were interested in talking to these producers reps, like, we took an active approach. I totally agree with you, Justin. I think that needs to keep happening. And unfortunately, you have a lot of festival makers that are crying foul about, not getting paid enough or not having enough time to do some of these extra things, which in my opinion is kind of why festivals should exist.
Yeah, right.
Just to piggyback on what Justin was saying, I think, like, if your ultimate goal as a film festival is to help a filmmaker through some method, like, a lot of these festivals struggle with having even an identity. If you're just like Random City Film Festival, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And when people hear that your film went to this random film festival, what does that even mean? Like, even something like CineQuest or FilmQuest that are known, you still don't, like, not everybody knows. Like, some people know what they are. So if you can, as a film festival, make yourself known for like a very specific thing and be really good at it, as opposed to just having the same mission statement as like 75% of other film festivals, if we support independent artists, like, that makes you on a much better, path to not only helping yourself as a festival, but also helping your filmmakers, because that is like, your festival is their branding at a certain point.
Yeah, I think Austin's a really good example of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're the writers' festival. So all their panels are about writing, all the films are about writing, their contest is obviously about writing. And I think because of that, we all know them as the Austin Film Festival, the writing, like, you want to get in their contest. You want to be a finalist in Austin. It's right under, I think, Nichols for most people, right? So like, you want to get our short getting in there was like a big deal, because it gave us a lot of credibility as early filmmakers that, like, oh, look, we can write, And so I think I think that's a really good point, Paul. I'd love to see film festivals really start to carve out, this is what we do, and do it well. And then I think you're going to see, a lot more connections between the filmmakers and the audience, essentially, of buyers and distributors and reps and whatnot, industry people, where there's that Venn diagram and overlap. And the Venn diagram, that little part where it overlaps, is that festival.
Yeah, those are great points, and I think it's something we talked a bit about on the Film Festival Mastery Festival Edition side too, right, Justin? It's like you can't do it all, and similar to the filmmaker goals, the festival has to have their goals too. And some festivals are fine to just be, look, we're just this festival in the Midwest, and we've got a community that likes to come to our venue, and they want to see the best of the fest that played in all these other festivals, and for them that's enough of an identity. But I think when you start asking yourself as a festival, what do I want to be, what is my identity, then that's what separates the average festival from the innovative festivals that have an opportunity to really kind of plant their flag in a certain way. Slamdance did it with first time directors. You mentioned Austin. There are some festivals that pride themselves in showing inspirational content. I think Bentonville is, celebrates female filmmakers and talent. So I do think if you can find that identity, it helps you kind of plant that flag and be stronger in that category. But it's funny how many festivals just frankly don't care. They just want a section of indies, a section of international, a few short programs, and if they sell tickets, and they kind of get by, then they're okay. But then they got to be honest with themselves and with the filmmakers that are paying submission fees. What are you doing for them?
Yeah, when you have like 12,000 film festivals in the world, even if you're like, we are South Asian Film Festival, there are so many of those too. Like that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So like lean in more and like be the one of whatever it is. And that's just so much cooler, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting as we're talking about this because I'm thinking about with Film Festival Master, the main thing that we train filmmakers on is how to take a look at their film, figure out what their goals are for that film, and connect to the right festivals and programmers so that you have a successful run. And I can see now sort of like the festivals are going to sort of have to start doing that same thing. And I think it's going to make filmmakers' jobs easier in a sense because they can really start being selective about what are the festivals that are actually in alignment with my goals and my end game, as opposed to I hope to God I get into Sundance and South by and you know, yes, those are lovely to get into, but they may not actually help you get what you want out of your film. Um,
Yeah.
especially if you don't get into them and you're in the top level, tier 2 stuff, you better be strategic about that. Otherwise, you're paying a lot of money to screen at some really cool places with good names if you get into them.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Sweet.
agree.
All right. Well, we solved that problem, guys. Cured. We did it. We did it.
Check
What is
that
your
off.
soundboard? I want a yay or there we go. I knew it was in there. I know your library now. Your mocking library. Uh, well, cool guys. Are there any other pieces about this that you guys want to weigh in on?
No, I do want to just bring up one of the things that has come up in our coaching sessions, Justin, which kind of wraps back into this kind of what you were just saying too. The idea of, we went through a period where because of COVID, festivals had to go virtual. And now we're kind of seeing our way out of that and seeing more hybrid opportunities for festivals. Some festivals are going full bore live, right? We talked about Telluride and now Cannes. So some of these fall events and even late summer are going fully live. But I do think that the hybrid situation is kind of where it's going to land.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of these festivals, we're talking about markets, but a lot of these festivals have proven that they can succeed online if they have all the right virtual elements. And hopefully Paul, will continue to do what we do with Filmocracy. But if you could create an interesting virtual opportunity, there is a future for that, and it can continue to expand even with live, alongside live. And whether the market thing evolves or not, or whether if a tier 2 or tier 3 festival starts to think more about memberships and sales and relationships with distributors, and whether they ever want to have like a market hat on remains to be seen. But I think it's an exciting time. And I don't know if Paul has any news or updates about new things coming on the Filmocracy virtual cinema side, but I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah, we're just doing some boring stuff, like adding ticketing, adding more infrastructure. But definitely the demand is there, and we're very excited to keep pushing technology forward. I think there's a lot of other platforms that have now like cemented themselves as like the go-to film festival online event platforms. But over the past year, I haven't really seen them add anything. And I wonder if they're just like, they're happy and kind of figured out like, okay, this is what we want to be and this is it. But for us, like, we're just going to keep adding stuff. So, stay tuned for when we can do ticketing, and, you don't have to go anywhere else to sell your tickets, and we can all stay on Filmocracy and be one big happy family.
Dude, that's so exciting. I feel like you are, not to blow smoke up your ass, but I really feel like this is exactly what needs to be happening. The like Filmocracy's mission statement and sort of circle of growth is the future. And
You have to be you have to be willing to innovate.
Yeah, and that's scary. I mean, you're on the cutting edge. We've had some of these conversations where you're like having to make decisions and choose to implement features and all this kind of stuff and try to stay on the cutting edge of it. But I think it's such a important, smart ideas, and I think it's the future. So good for you guys.
Yeah.
So yay, Filmocracy. And then also, John, we should probably officially announce that like Film Festival Mastery has some new offerings. We've rearranged the structure of what we do and pricing and all that jazz. And the short version of it now is that it's sort of built into our pricing and into the program that if you enroll in Film Festival Mastery, John and I watch your film. We give you, feedback on it. We give you feedback on your strategy. We give you a custom list of festivals. And then we refer that film out to any programmers that we think are going to like it.
Bazinga!
That's now just part of that's now just part of the sort of Film Festival Mastery promise. No, but that's part of what we do now, is that we discovered when we created this that the goal we set out for was to attract professional filmmakers at the top of their game. And I honestly didn't know if that was going to happen, but it did. And so now we want to make sure that we can give ourselves more over to helping filmmakers out. So not so much meaning to do a commercial as much as it is that we've been talking a lot about is sort of the curation with trusted people. And Filmocracy is doing that. Film Festival Mastery is doing that. Like, that is the future. And
Kickstarter guy is doing that.
Kickstarter guys do. Well, Kickstarter guys, I mean,
been doing that.
No, I had a campaign last week, have a $60,000 first day. So
wow,
I'm still feeling cool. Like I'm one of the cool kids. Yay. So yeah, everybody,
you get a golf clap too.
So, check out the respective links if you're a filmmaker, but we're so glad to have you guys listening and here and sort of part of the family now. And, if you've got, if you're listening to this podcast and you've got questions or you've got topics you'd like for us to talk about or discuss, please email us. Any one of us. Paul, you're paul@filmocracy.com, right? John and I, John Justin, we are at John Justin respectively at filmfestivalmaster.com. Although, John, you're probably iGems TV be better?
Yeah, JON for anybody that thinks that all Johns are JOHN. But yeah, John at iGems, IGEMS.tv. I visit a bit more than Filmocracy, but I will find it at Filmocracy as well.
Yeah, I want to hear that story of that deep rage that bubbled up when you mentioned the H in John's name. Years and years of pent up anger. I could hear it.
Well, the irony is it's not short for Jonathan. It's
I did not know that.
JON.
Yeah, you are JON. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Very mysterious.
And on that note, anything else to share, gents?
I think we're all good. We appreciate everybody coming. Maybe it's obvious, but our websites, filmfestivalmastery.com, filmocracy.com, igems.tv. Check us out. We're here to support filmmakers, so and festivals for that matter. So check us out.
Yep. thekickstarterguy.com also. And then if you are wanting to get back episodes of the podcast, we've got it at filmfestivalmastery.com/podcast.
Nice.
Sweet.
Nice.
All right. Cool. Peace, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.